go by Oz. I'm born and bred in Seattle. 77 years old, lived here all my life.
And I'm Judy. I'm Oz's wife, and I was born in Portland, but grew up in Longview, Washington. Have been in Seattle since college, which was 1967. I came to the University of Washington for school.
Seattle has been a great place to live. It's wonderful to be outside. The weather is always changing. You only have to go 2 hours in any direction to get to an ocean, a desert, the mountains, which makes it neat. What's happened over my lifetime is the population has doubled. When I was born, there were just about 400,000. And I think last year's census was 817,000. It was, when I was younger, coming out of, my parents came out of the Depression, and my dad came out of World War II. He and my mom met when she moved from Georgia to Seattle to work at Boeing to build airplanes for the war. Boeing was at the time the industry in Seattle. Probably 1 in 10, I don't know the exact figure, but 1 in 10 worked for Boeing. In 1969, Boeing had a very bad downturn, and one of the interesting things about that was the billboards saying, "The last person leaving Seattle, please turn out the lights."
Because of many firings, they're all job loss.
Job loss because of the downturn. The big things here, the World's Fair probably was the biggest publicity advantage to Seattle. Prior to 1962, the city was kind of a very quiet, up in the northwest corner of the states. Most people didn't know anything about it. But the World's Fair really brought the people in. It was nice to see. I was playing in a band at the time, and we actually performed there, which was fun. You know, I'm old. I think I was 12 or 13. The next big thing that occurred here in Seattle for us was the Vietnam War, where we were of the age that we were in the middle of the protests from start till it began.
We were in college.
We were in college at the time. On May 5th of 1970, we, people who marched against Kent State, the shootings at Kent State and the invasion of Cambodia in the Vietnam War, closed the freeway down, the express lanes. We marched from the U down to the Federal Building downtown Seattle, which we'd never seen anything like it here before in terms of a protest. After that, Boeing came back, was really big, and then the tech invasion occurred, and not only the population rise incredibly, but the wealth of the city really went off the rails. It's just nuts about the amount of money that the tech industry brought into the city.
So a couple of other events that happened during our lifetime here. One was the Columbus Day storm, 1962, October, Columbus Day, hence the name. I was still in high school and living in Longview, and it hit Longview greater than it hit Seattle. We didn't realize until 40 years later that it was a hurricane. The Northwest had never in history experienced a hurricane, but in retrospect, this hurricane had evolved from, well, I guess a cyclone, and it had curved from going northwest to going northeast and hit the coast. and 150-mile-an-hour winds. So
Yeah.
that was really a big event for us, especially when you're young and impressionable. Another big geological event was Mount St. Helens erupting. We were sitting, it was Sunday morning, about 8:30. We were just getting ready to go play tennis over at Woodland Park. And we heard this loud bang and another bang. And we thought somebody is just slamming their door outside. So we go outside and look, nothing. So we go to the tennis courts, and about 2 hours later, we hear through the grapevine that it was Mount St. Helens that had blown. So that was, and then of course seeing it on TV was just amazing. It was such an amazing event that, you know, few people get to witness in real time. Another thing that Oz mentioned, or didn't mention, was that he grew up near Green Lake, and he had a house on Latona and what?
Dogwood.
Anyway, it is now the I-5 freeway. So his father was paid by the government to move out of the house. And so the house was destroyed, and they moved to a new house. So
freeway there, yeah.
Very close to 71st as it goes over the freeway.
Yeah, 71st, 72nd, yeah.
And there was another weather event that was very memorable, and that was in 1995, pretty sure, 95. And it was a huge snowstorm. And it was so huge that all of I-5 around Mercer, I remember seeing images of this on TV. I had gotten home before it got bad, and so did Oz from work. Cars were abandoned on the freeway. It looked like a war zone because people couldn't go anywhere. So they just got out of their cars
Left
and
them.
walked out. So that was pretty amazing. There's one story that I will remind Oz to tell, which was very interesting. I understand from Christine and Bob that Christine had talked about the covenants here. Okay. We have paperwork that we had saved from when we bought the house that had the language of the covenants in it. And we showed our neighbor who lived in this house kitty corner, and she was African American. Her husband was white, and we had told her about this, and she said, "I'm very interested in learning about this." This was probably 20 years ago when they lived there. So we pulled it out of the basement and showed it to her. It took how many years for them to officially repeal that law?
The covenants were formed for this neighborhood in 1954, and I'm guessing it took at least 30 years to have them revoked. But the interesting thing is it says, you know, that no person other than the white race can live in a house unless employed by the house owner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which, having, you know, grown up around here and had not had any sorts of dealings with, well, the different individuals, with just everybody accepted everybody. And to read those when we bought the house was kind of eye-opening, to say the least.
Except that Oz had first-hand experience with discrimination.
Oh,
when
that's
he
right.
was in the 8th grade?
8th grade.
Tell Alice about that.
My family on my father's side is Mexican, and as a kid, in the summertime, growing up at Green Lake, we were at the lake every day and wore nothing but a pair of shorts, a pair of tennis shoes. So when I'm in the sun that much, I get really, really dark in terms of a tan. I was at the Windermere Beach Club with some friends, and the lifeguard asked me to leave the beach. And the quote was, he said, "We don't serve your kind here." And so, yeah. First time I'd ever experienced anything like that. Wouldn't be the last, not here, but in Texas. But that was kind of eye-opening at the time because nobody thought anything about it. just been on the beach for day after day after day. But growing up in Green Lake was fun. Everybody swam, everybody played in there, in the lake. The Green Lake itch, if it existed, nobody ever got it. Unlike now,
Which is from the algae bloom.
from the algae bloom. There used to be a creek that ran out of Green Lake down Ravenna Park, and that's since been closed off. It was closed off in the repaving near the local junior high school. We have lived in this home for over 50 years and thoroughly enjoy the neighborhood. It's quiet. The neighbors are incredible people. It's been a wonderful time. Wouldn't want to live anyplace else.
I feel the same.
One thing as a kid, at 130th in Aurora North, used to be an amusement park called Playland. Ferris wheels, big shoot the chutes, which was a big U-shaped barge that they pull way up to the top of a very steep hill. And then they let it go and it'd slide into a pond of water, water going everywhere. We thought that was pretty cool. But that's no longer there. I don't know that unless you're my age that you would probably remember that.
The one thing that brings to mind is that in the 50s, you were not allowed or encouraged not to swim in Lake Washington because it was so polluted.
Yeah.
And over the next 10 years or so, it was cleaned up.
Took longer than that.
Did it?
Yeah.
And now it's a fabulous place for recreation and fishing and boating and swimming and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, at the time, they used a big white disc that they would sink in the water, and they would measure how deep you could see the disc to indicate the pollution level of all the algae and stuff. And eventually it got clean enough to swim.
The other interesting landmark in Seattle is Sand Point. So it was a naval air station in the 30s and 40s. And we have a good friend who is a marine aviation technician before he went to college. That's where he and Oz met. But Mike was stationed at Sandpoint, and he took me on a walking tour in the park down there called Magnuson Park, and pointed out all of the former military structures. And he said, "You see this bunker here? It had munitions stored under it. As you know, it was an airfield at one time, and many of the hangars are still there. They're old and decrepit, but they're still there." And I asked Mike, when was Sandpoint built? Because I knew it was active during World War II. And he said it was built in the 30s. And I said, why? And he said, the Japanese. The Japanese in the 30s were invading China and Korea. And so the United States felt that they were, at risk. So I didn't know it was built that early.
My dad was a pilot in World War II, and after the war, he stayed in the reserves so he could fly. He flew into Sandpoint regularly in the summer and doing his 2-week reserve summer encampment. So we used to go down there to the post exchange, the PX, because he being in the military, you get a price break on all kinds of good stuff. So it was really nice to travel there. At the time, now it's nothing. If you cross Sandpoint Way from Magnuson, it's nothing but apartments. It's completely built up. During the 50s and 60s, there was literally nothing across the street from Sandpoint. It was nothing but a grass and tree-covered hill, and now completely developed. That might be the single biggest change in the city, certainly in my lifetime, is that areas you used to be able to go to, no traffic, very few homes, and now it's stacked one on top of the other, and trying to park someplace is unbelievable. I think Ballard is probably the best example of that. Trying to go anywhere in Ballard is really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, the growth has really changed this city
Yeah,
in good and bad ways,
for sure.
which you've talked about. The tech industry, you know, bringing wealth and then creating greater disparity of income and affordability issues for middle-class people. So we've evolved with it.
Yeah. Worked as a junior high school teacher for 39 years. Taught in the North Shore School District for all but one of those. So the commute, even up until the time I retired in 2010, was a reverse commute. So going out in the morning north on Lake City Way, there was nobody on the roads. Nobody. I can remember driving through Bothell with the radio on, listening to the news when one of the listeners called in and said that the Hood Canal Bridge was gone. The storm had blown in and literally blown the bridge down. They had completely rebuilt it, and I believe it took 2 to 3 years. They put a ferry in to get people from this side to the Olympic Peninsula, and pretty amazing. Same thing happened in another big storm for the I-90 bridge, floating bridge. It was blown down. They were working on it, and the pontoons filled with water, and they sank.
Yeah.
Sank.
Yeah. So I worked as a nurse for 52 years. I worked at University Hospital, Harborview, and then for the last 40 years at the VA hospital in an outpatient clinic in neurology. And so I went the opposite direction from our home that Oz did, and we were actually the same distance from our workplace, which was about 11 miles.
Yeah.
Which we're thankful it wasn't any more than that, because as traffic got busier, it just took longer to get anywhere. So I felt very fortunate to have the job I did, and am also enjoying retirement a lot.